Hi, everybody. Hope we are doing really well. Just wanted to jump in here, my usual Wednesday live. It's a very chilled morning here in Melbourne, so I've got my big warm camping jacket on. But I wanted to talk about finance and finance specifically related to sustainability. So many have heard probably the term of green financing. Green financing's probably been around for longer. It's sort of the sort of typical story around sustainability, which is that we first focus on the easy wins because it is a large and complex concept, right? I think I've said this many times. And so focusing on green finance means focusing on environmentally focused projects and initiatives that are around those sort of greener developments, such as wind farm developments or sustainable buildings. And so we really started there focusing on these green projects that could really help drive sustainable development. And now that term has evolved, or really green finance is still around, but the term has expanded in terms of financial support for more sustainable initiatives that are just beyond the environmental perspective and really looking at the social and the human perspective as well. And so it's a really important space for us to understand because it's certainly taking off very quickly. And definitely, I know it's impacting many of the financial institutions, even in Australia. Many of the banks are talking about this. They're talking about the TCFD and frameworks of thinking that will help them better allow for that flow of money. Because that financial flow from banking, from credit, microcredits, insurance to investments, all of that across public, private, not-for-profit sectors, it's going to help drive better, improved sustainable initiatives and priorities. And when we improve the flow of the money as well through our economy, we essentially improve the resilience as well because we've seen it, right? The linear economy isn't working for us. And I'm going to say it now. The disclaimer is I don't know enough about economics and financial systems for me to make explicit comments on this. But what I can say is that we've seen that the linear economy is not working for us. And we've also seen that, yes, there is a need for kind of disruption, such as, recessions and pitfalls in the economy for it to then rebuild itself and grow and become better and stronger. But what is sort of concerning is that with climate change, there are going to be much more climate events taking place. And as a result of those climate events, there are going to be many more financial impacts through both the physical and transitional risks that we're seeing. And so if we're not better equipped in our economic systems, that's at a micro, meso, and a macro scale, then we're going to really struggle with the resilience and the risk in our business operations. And so this is why it's really important for a business to consider where are the opportunities to support their business through investment and funding. But in addition, how can they also be a part of this sort of sustainable financial system that is kind of rapidly taking form? So, I guess to kind of just focus broadly on sustainable finance, because now that we're sort of seeing that space really kind of emerge, it's covering all four pillars of sustainability, right? We're talking about environmental or natural, social, human, and economic. So it's about making money while doing the right thing, while also improving our business operations and building resilience. So there's a lot of benefits to it. So I guess to kind of dive into the benefits, there's two perspectives, right? When you're talking about money and lending, we're talking about the borrowers, we're talking about the lenders. So from the borrower's perspective, in terms of sustainable finance, well, the first thing is we're getting to meet the requirements of our stakeholders, because the stakeholders, such as investors, shareholders, even just employees or clients or customers, they have certain expectations of the business and they have certain experiences with the business that are probably key impacts to in terms of sustainability. There are key impacts in these interactions. So by overcoming these interactions through better and more informed financial decisions, you can help meet the expectations and the requirements of these stakeholders. So that's one thing. The second is you're getting access to capital for essentially sustainably focused projects that will improve your business's reputation as well. So you sort of improve your business reputation, but in the same sort of breath, you also get to reduce the exposure of your business to climate risks, because there are certainly a lot of systemic risks that are in our business operations that are embedded in our supply chain that we just really don't have much idea about until we dive deeply into a materiality impact assessment. So there's real value here in both improving your reputation while de-risking your business and building resilience. So it's terms that I come back to very often because they're just really, they should just sell themselves. It's just so important, right? For any business to de-risk, especially in this very kind of disruptive age that we're moving into or that we're in. And so the other thing is, of course, that positive bragging rights and the opportunity to tell people the story, your green story, your sustainable story, and then as well to build in that financial incentive, those margins, penalties for suppliers who are in your supply chain that are not meeting that, and all of these things that really kind of bring everybody along this journey, not just your business, but your supply chain, especially if you are sort of a bigger business in the supply chain, then you've got, I guess, more buying power and better say in what the others are doing as well. So a lot of benefits to the borrowers in this space, but there's also benefits to the lenders, right? Because I can say that, I'm seeing more and more insurance premiums increase and insurance sort of litigation or issues kind of coming up because the borrowers are not considering their climate risk. And so because they're not considering their climate risk, when the events happened, which they do, they're not well equipped to tackle the issues and the impacts of the climate event. And so they're obviously having to make bigger claims, make more frequent claims. So in the insurance space, it's certainly already starting to disrupt the insurance industry, and they're realizing they need to have these sort of financial systems. Well, they need to improve their financial system and the flow of their money through considering sustainability principles. So hence comes forth the idea of sustainable finance. So anyways, I digress. Getting back to the point that the benefits for the lenders, so from their perspective is, again, they get to meet, stakeholder requirements because they themselves have their own, stakeholders, shareholders, and so on that have certain expectations of the organization, of the financial institution. So one is, to be able to meet those requirements and those expectations. But two is also to be able to retain more clients. So especially when interacting with bigger clients or really clients that are more progressive, there is a sustainability lens across everything. And so they're certainly going to have these expectations of everybody that they interact with, including the lenders who are part of their business and their operations. So the lenders both get to sort of meet the market requirements, but they also reduce their exposures to the systemic risk again. So it's also from their perspective, they get to reduce systemic risk because they're using their money more effectively on the right projects that are sustainably focused, that are more resilient, that are de-risked. And so they get to then protect their money because it's been proven, or at least seen through correlation across, sort of various examples, that when your business is considering climate risk, when it's being climate diligent, you're automatically de-risking your business operation. So with a more resilient business operation, then of course you're less susceptible to financial impacts that come about with climate issues or climate events. So there's of course the perspective of reducing their exposure as a lending institution or as a lending entity. And so again, from the flip side of the lenders, they get to sort of share this with the market. They get to take those bragging rights forward into the market and talk about all the great things that they're doing with their money, and that their shareholders or their investors can really be part of this journey and also be satisfied in knowing that these lenders are doing the right thing. And of course, satisfying regulations through governments and regulatory frameworks that are certainly really coming into play in Australia. It's still a developing space, but for one thing, there is the TCFD that is really driving this conversation. So if you haven't heard of it before, certainly look it up. So the TCFD is the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. And then there's also the TNFD, which is the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosure. That's from a perspective that nature has capital value. Therefore, the term natural capital has come into existence because we've understood that we can't just take from nature without valuing the capital that we're taking from, that natural capital that we're taking from that tree, and how much carbon it can remove from the environment, how many species that it houses, also what products can be made out of it, what value the byproducts then have, and so on and so forth. So, there's so much to it. And so these sorts of frameworks, the TCFD, the TNFD, they're really starting to define the way financial institutions can operate and improve the way that they operate so that there is a better financial flow in the economy. The idea, at least with the TCFD, is we consider our climate risks, quantify the financial impacts, and then look at ways to mitigate those risks through diligent climate action. So that's through not just climate action, but I think across the areas of sustainability. So definitely, social impact as well and human impact as well. So the TCFD really was brought about roughly, I think now maybe 8 years, 2023, roughly 8 years ago, the conversation really kicked off where the Financial Stability Board realized that there needs to be a financial framework in place to protect our economy as the climate starts to change and as the climate events start to happen more frequently. Because the 2008 crisis, when that hit, there was a real absolute disruption of our economy, and much of it as well was correlated to, they saw the causative effect was the environment and the changes in the environment as well from human impact. And so thinking about that and thinking about the economy and really the 4 pillars of sustainability, bringing that together, the TCFD is a framework of thinking that can really change the way that money flows through the economy. So it's just a really interesting space. It's certainly continuing to evolve, and more and more businesses are starting to think about how they can improve the financial flow within their business, and how they can also interact better with their stakeholders through the projects and the initiatives that they take on, and how can they get support as well for doing these great initiatives, because it's not always there. The capital's not always there for them to just do it straight away, even though it's such a great project. And I think what was interesting is when I was listening in on it was sort of like a side event for the COP events, the COP26 program, when that happened. And I remember Bill Gates speaking on this sort of, I can't remember what this side event was called. I think it was organized by The Economist. And I couldn't make all of the events. It was at crazy times for me. But what was really interesting was Bill Gates saying that one of the things that we don't really think about very often as a business is setting money aside, regardless of the size of your business, setting money aside for an R&D initiative or team or program of sorts. Because if you've got that in place, if you've got that R&D initiative in place, I mean, aside from the fact that it's super progressive, it gives you guys the opportunity as a business to be the first to an idea, right, through your research and development. But aside from that, even if you don't have it in-house, if you collaborate with a university, it's a great opportunity to collaborate So that's another benefit. And I guess what I'm really getting at though is the real great opportunity about having this R&D initiative. And I really liked when Bill Gates brought this up, is because it means that your business is part of the solution and really gets to reap the benefits as first movers, as pioneers in this space. And you've got this money aside to, I guess, take some chances, take some risks in a strategic way, in a calculated way that's going to benefit your business, but also benefit the industry. And it really helps this space grow, improve quicker. It helps the sustainability space, which is really across everything. It helps it improve quicker, because if you've got your pharmaceutical business, which they're obvious in terms of having R&D, but then you've also got, the marketing firm down the road who's also doing some R&D. You've got the accountants doing R&D. You've got the car manufacturers doing R&D, and everybody is and doing R&D with the view of sustainability in mind. Then you're improving you're setting aside money for something really valuable for your business, but you're improving this journey towards a more sustainable future in a much more rapid way. So I think it's a really interesting point, sort of a side note to what I'm saying, but I think that there's a connection there. So I just wanted to share that thought, and I hope that this session's been valuable for you. I see some of you here on LinkedIn, always shy to say hello, but shouldn't be. I'm definitely all up for conversations and questions. So look, I am going to be ending this now, but if you have a question that you wanted to ask, or a thought that you wanted to share, feel free to. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, I just hope that you all have an incredible day. Take care of yourselves, and talk to you all soon. Bye, everybody. Have a great week.